T. Scott Jones join us now with Banks and Jones. You can follow them on Twitter. Just tweeted them out. Tennessee's trial attorney. They go to trial for you, and that's not the case with other personal injury attorneys, especially. The lawsuit apparently is close to being settled between former players and the NCAA, and it looks like $2.7 billion with a B dollars will be paid to former athletes over the next decade.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting how that's apportioned out. I mean, I think it was inevitable. I mean, I think the NCAA stayed at the table way too long. You know, when this first came about, I think they could have mitigated it, worked out something in the NIL, but, you know, they were so used to being the 800-pound gorilla in the room, and by God, what the NCAA says goes. And obviously the good folks from Tennessee and some of the other states that joined in, sort of, as we say with the dogs in the South, broke a dog from sucking eggs. So that being said, you know, it's interesting. I mean, the NCAA lost a lot of teeth with regards to that. And then you look at that, it's not only that 2.7 billion with a B, but also other payments that they're going to make on an annual basis as far as to achieve goals associated with this. And I think, you know, the lawsuit, when we looked at that lawsuit to begin with, part of the court's reasoning was what sort of I talked about with Jaden Rashada, was the fact that they've only got a finite window in which, you know, they can play ball. And, you know, it's interesting. I mean, and then you look back, and I guess I look at all these different sports. I mean, look at Ted Williams. I mean, Ted Williams took 2 leaves of absence, World War II and the Korean War, as a pilot. And think about where his stats would have been otherwise. Well, you know, not everybody's Ted Williams, but that being said, if you've got a finite window and you can pay 4 years of college ball and you're looking at $9 million, I mean, you better jump on it. I mean, $9 million, you know, in a working lifetime, that's life changing.
Yeah, so I want to get to they're going to pay out 2.7 billion, and reportedly the conferences and schools have agreed to where every school is given like a $20 million amount that they can give to players directly now. That's going to be the reported agreement. My question on that is, with the payouts to the athletes and with this 20 million, where does Title IX come into this? Because I mean, I'm assuming
I was going to key on that. I was like, you know, what are we going to do? Because the balance between athletics and the fact, you know, I mean, where does it come down to? I mean, is there going to be parity that if you're a Division I athlete in whatever sport, let's say that you're a field hockey player, you get the same amount as a quarterback in Division I football? I mean, you know, where is the line drawn there? So, you know, I'm not disparaging field hockey or advocating football, but I'm just saying that, you know, it's going to be interesting with regards how that also plays into the Title IX, because I think you're going to see litigation if there's not some sort of parity there, saying that effectively it's discriminating against, for lack of a better term, non-money making sport athletes.
Interesting.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's sort of like Pandora's box. I mean, you know, NIL came to, be, and then here come all of these questions. I mean, you know, we're going to see a lot of litigation in the future relative to it. And I don't know. I mean, do I think that they ought to get paid to play ball? Yeah. But I mean, you know, where's the limit going to be? I mean, you go back and you look at salaries historically, NFL, NBA, and Major League Baseball, and it's not that many years ago that somebody got their first $1 million a year contract, right? And so when you start talking $9 million, okay, you know, it's kind of like, okay, well, you know, Jaden, you got 9.5 million. Well, Tommy over here from wherever you're from, we're going to pay you 10, and then it's going to be 10.5, and then it's going to be 15. I mean, you know, where is the limit? I mean, it is, I guess the sky is the limit. It could be astronomically expensive.
So, T. Scott Jones, going forward with that, I just wanted to ask you a broader, I guess, almost constitutional question on this. If 2 pieces of federal legislation, or state legislation for that matter, because it could be within a state too, are passed, that sometime down the road end up contradicting each other, does it then fall on the courts to decide which legislation takes precedent? Because in this, like, Title IX blatantly contradicts the Antitrust Act, doesn't it? And so,
I'm not going to go that far out on a ledge with regards to that. But that being said, I think that there are some inconsistencies. Isn't that the lawyer term where we obfuscate? There are some inconsistencies that are going to end up having to be settled by a court of law relative to these situations. I don't see any other means to deal with it. And, what do we do with all this money that's going to be flowing into the university? I mean, that's a lot of money, guys.
The Jaden Rashada case is very public, but I guarantee you there's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 12 or a dozen or more that of cases similar to this. Do you think other potential lawsuits are just kind of waiting to see what happens with Rashada that might be out there?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of going to be one of those situations. It's almost going to be like an apportionment among this $2.7 billion. I mean, I'm not taking away anything from it, but we've seen all those commercials about Camp Lejeune water, and there's been settlement funds authorized by Congress, and it's going to be paid out. Well, how is this $2.7 billion going to be paid out amongst all of the institutions? I mean, you realize there's going to have to be infrastructure put in place where we're going to evaluate Johnny or Jane or whomever was, a candidate to receive that money and how much they should receive. Well, obviously, if you're Johnny or Jane's lawyer, they are the best thing in the world. I mean, everything in a bag of chips. But then, where is sort of the objective evaluation of how much is everything worth? I mean, where do we come into that? I mean, again, is the $2.7 billion going to be set up in a trust fund and there's going to be a claim procedure where folks make a claim against it? Or how do you go about willy-nilly paying it out? I mean, where does it come from? I mean, who decides who is worth what?
So,
well, my guess is, sorry to interrupt, Caleb. My guess is they'll probably spend about $500 million to put together a committee to examine all the different possibilities, and they'll spend their first $500 million there.
Well, I tell you what, I'm willing to do it for a compromise $499 million. Scott, I mean, I will continue to sponsor the show, and I will soldier on through. Albeit, I honestly, my law practice may have to be wrapped up, but for $409, that would be life changing for me. So,
for me as well.
I just God did not bless me with the ability to throw or catch a football, but my verbosity knows no bounds.
I like it.
So rather than go through Congress, then, so you think it's possible that the courts could maybe find a way to carve out certain, I guess, antitrust exemptions for the NCAA to say, okay, you have to abide by these, but okay, we'll give you a little bit of leeway to not have to abide by these parts of the antitrust law because otherwise you just can't operate. Do you think that's how this ends up?
I don't know. I mean, it's going to, it's clearly not going to be just decided by a lower level court. It's going to go to, obviously, whatever particular federal circuit gets the appeal from where this litigation starts. And then, perhaps we see it in a couple of 3 years in the United States Supreme Court. I mean, it's got enough far reaching implications that they're not going to want, say the Ninth Circuit making one decision and the Sixth Circuit making another decision. So I can almost see the U.S. Supreme Court reaching down and saying, okay, let's grab the bull by the horn and let's sort of solve this problem, because I think that's certainly a possibility and out there on the horizon. I mean, it's going to be interesting to kind of monitor how all this sorts out. And you almost kind of wonder, now, are we going to see a solicitation of all of these athletes, kind of echoing what Dave said of, hey, were you a college athlete during the past X number of years? Did you receive any compensation? Obviously, the answer is no. Contact us and allow us to file the claim. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen there, but it's going to be interesting. But you guys see that's a real possibility, right?
Yeah, and we're not just talking about football. We're talking about, if I'm a volleyball player, I can say, well, you sold some volleyball stuff, and I was, wow, what a mess.
It is. I mean, it's a brave new world out there. So, I mean, I think we're going to see more court intervention and more, figuring all of this out. And then I think we're going to see NIL cooperatives get very, very careful about how they make offers to athletes in order to induce them to come to the schools. I.e., they're going to put qualifiers and escape clauses and everything else on it because, even if ultimately Billy Napier and the rest of the litigants are successful in defending Jaden Rashada's lawsuit, it's still going to cost them a dump truckload of money to defend it. So, I mean, there's nothing cheap in the litigation area.